Now, this country, like most European nations, maintains compulsory schooling until at least the age of 16. But should that be lowered? The Scottish Conservatives today propose that pupils as young as 15 or 14 should be able to leave school if they take on an apprenticeship or go to college. To launch the policy, the party leader Russell Finlay visited a building site to illustrate what he sees are some of the opportunities that could be opened up to young people.
Well, what we are doing is bringing forward a very bold new proposal, which is to give every single young person in Scotland the chance to succeed. Right now, 1 in 7 school leavers leave without a single qualification. For many pupils aged under 16, 15, possibly even 14, they have no time for school. They disengage, they're not even attending, and they leave school and they're consigned to the scrap heap. And what we want to do is give them the opportunity to learn a trade, to learn to be educated simultaneously. So it'll be a form of hybrid education whereby they are training for a job for the future.
We reflected on the proposal with the university student Anna Dunn and the education journalist and former teacher James McEnaney. Anna, so you left school at 16. What do you think about this idea? Do you think it would suit some kids to leave at 14 and go into apprenticeships or college perhaps?
I think it's important to recognise that so many children are suited to different forms of education. I think that the kind of idea of sending them into different types of colleges, that kind of thing, can be quite restrictive for a lot of children. I think that sending them at 14 can be quite harmful in a sense, because it's difficult when you're 14 to kind of decide your future, that kind of thing. But I mean, I left at 16 and I went straight to university, and I was lucky enough that I knew what I wanted to go into. But I think that there needs to be a change in the school system itself to suit more children and to kind of adapt to different possibilities or different interests and trades and skills, so that education can cater to children rather than...
Yeah, but what do you think about this policy then of kids going into, straight into apprenticeships or training?
I think it's important to kind of have the kind of years in school to socialise and grow up and, maybe kind of see different options as well. I think that leaving school at 14, it can be quite a big kind of jump and change, but and obviously I think that it can kind of push children into the workforce, maybe prematurely before they can work at 16.
Okay, as a former teacher, James, what do you think about this idea?
I think there's a reason that the reaction to it has been what it has today, when we put it that way. This is one of these, identifying or being able to see at least the surface level of a problem, being able to identify that, but I don't think getting even close to right about how you address that problem. So, I've said this before, but no one needs to convince me that there are lots and lots of kids for whom the system doesn't work particularly well. People know that I was a college lecturer for years. I spent the better part of my professional life so far working really with people for whom the system didn't work particularly well. But the idea that the solution to that is to say, oh, well, we'll just move down the age of compulsory education with all the implications that would have, all of the, what I'm relatively sure are unintended and unnoticed so far consequences. It's not a go. It's not really a particularly serious idea, I don't think, to be honest.
But if a pupil is just, not getting on at school, is basically just spending their time looking out the window, killing time until they can leave school, surely it would be better for them to leave and be doing something constructive.
I think, 100%, the system isn't diverse enough in terms of how we seek to meet the needs of young people. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that there shouldn't be routes that allow young people, while they're engaged in school, to opt to be doing other things as well, or to maybe do things like start apprenticeships. That's something that we do through things like foundation apprenticeships, but the thing that I think maybe people are missing with this, while some of those aspects of this would be beneficial and should be pursued, doing it by reducing the age at which people are able to stop compulsory education would actually be really damaging. As I say, the unintended consequences of this would be serious.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere like Switzerland, for instance, the kids leave there at 15. So it can work in some ways.
Yeah, in some countries where it's 18. So, yes, there are different places to do things different ways. But as with everything in education, there's very, very, very little you can ever look at in education and just say, like, you could move something from one place to another. That doesn't really work. Everything's too contextual for that.
I mean, the Scottish Government has denounced the idea today, but do you think the Government is doing enough, Anna, to close the attainment gap and improve education in Scotland?
I think there are so many children that maybe fall short of the education system because it does not cater to all young people, and I think that there really needs to be a kind of change and movement towards different options for young people, you know, less emphasis on exams for all and trying to find people's strengths and making sure that they are doing the best they can, because I think that children from different backgrounds, that kind of thing, not every school can kind of equally facilitate that, and I think that it's really important that each school kind of finds different ways to cater to the young people, and especially going by a case-by-case bias or a case-by-case method and kind of working with young people and parents, that kind of thing, carers and guardians.
I mean, James, what do you think the Scottish Government should be doing? I mean, you're critical of what Russell Finley's suggesting, but it's a bold idea, and are we not lacking bold ideas?
I actually don't think we're really lacking bold ideas in Scottish education. I don't think over the last sort of 10 years, maybe, when I've been involved in this stuff, there's been a lack of radical ideas for what we could do. The government's own, you know, reviews recently have come up with some pretty radical ideas. Just that the government's then said they're not doing them. So I don't think the problem is a lack of bigger interest in ideas. I don't think just being a bold idea is necessarily a great defence for something like this, obviously. But no, there have been for years and years and years people really advocating for some really major radical changes that depend on people's views on them. You know, it may be marvellous and game-changing, or might be, you know, going away down the wrong roads. But it kind of feels like part of the reason maybe that it's been difficult for the last 10 years to really have a proper set of discussions about that, to have a real national conversation about it, is actually maybe because of some of this kind of stuff, you know, like these kind of policies that are about attention and grabbing headlines. And as much as you can maybe argue, well, at least people are talking about education.
Yeah.
I think maybe, but after we've kind of done this, and after today, is this really going to lead to a bigger, stronger conversation?
Yeah.
I'm not convinced.
And your experience of being at school is much more fresh in your mind than James and I certainly me. Do you feel that there's a cohort of pupils that are very much let down, as you say, too much emphasis on exams, that they're slipping between the cracks?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that especially in certain kind of schools that focus on things like league tables, they're really pushing for grades, and they maybe let children who are maybe not pushing for qualifications kind of fall by the wayside. And I think that there really needs to be an emphasis on education catering to the individual rather than the individual catering to exams and qualifications. I think that young people need to be made aware of different pathways they can take, especially because education and the traditional school system does not fit all. And I think that it's something that really lets a lot of young people down. You
would agree with that, James, just very briefly?
Yeah, there are certainly, as I say, I met an awful lot of people who were let down by the school system. There are some real major changes I think that we should be at least willing to discuss, and I think one of the big frustrations in Scotland maybe is that there's just a reluctance to really take them seriously.
Yeah, OK, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.